All right, we're gonna get started. So thank you for everyone coming. You'll notice that on the agenda, we have a series of breaks. About 11:15, we have this, we're gonna kick this off by talking about use cases. Then we're gonna have Tim Dixon from Generac. We're gonna do a little bit of an interview style walkthrough of everything that he's learned through his AI pursuits. There'll be a lot of opportunity for you to ask him questions as well. So get those ready as we go through this first one. I'm actually gonna show you some of the things that we've done for him. So you should be ready to kind of ask him things about what he has experienced after we get through with a little bit of interview. And then we'll have a break. So all does it need to use the potty? You can do that at your own leisure or at that point. And then we will talk about the ways to get started. And that's where we'll pull in some people, Brandon, one of our lead data scientists, to talk a little bit more about that. We'll have lunch. And then after lunch, we'll have the opportunity to talk about commodity versus custom, which is going to be a really fascinating conversation considering how much is dropping right now. So that's our day. It's going to be a whirlwind tour. You will be drinking from the fire hose and ask as many questions as you want. We'll try to keep it on track. If we go a little bit over, we'll make adjustments as we go through the day. Introduce ourselves. My name is Nathan Wisnowski. I'm Concurrency's Chief Technology Officer. Been with Concurrency for about 22 years. Been doing data science work for about 7. This has been one of the most exciting points of my life in the technology space. I've never talked to so many executive teams about the transformation that AI is driving in their business. This is such a tremendous opportunity for all of us to think about our businesses in a new way. So I'm really privileged to have the opportunity to talk with you today, and I want to introduce Brian.
Yeah, I'm Brian Hayden. I'm a solution architect at Concurrency. I've been here for 6 years. Yeah, we've been doing data science for pretty much since I got here. You know, we've had data science on staff, so a lot of fun. This last year has been really incredible with the leaps and bounds of technology, and I'll share it with you.
Awesome, awesome. This is one of only a few AI events happening in the Milwaukee area. Just 2 nights ago, Milwaukee Tech had the AI group kickoff for AI community. So if you're looking for more things like this, there is a ton getting started. We're going to be launching more events here, more events in the Milwaukee Tech community. So keep track of all the things that we've been talking about and future opportunities to chat about AI. All right, so let's talk about production use cases. So there's 3 things I want you to take out of this session. If I were to just kind of encapsulate this down to a few main points. The first is that the AI opportunity is real. There are only a few major transitions that we experience in our lifetimes, and we have the privilege of experiencing one right now. Think back to the major transitions that we may have experienced, the internet. What else has been more monumental than that? Maybe the Industrial Revolution. One of the biggest opportunities as a result of this is, in a sense, enabling humans in a way that was undone as a result of the Industrial Revolution. You think about what that did. It turned people into cogs and machines, right? It took things that were craftsmanship and turned them into opportunities to produce from a manufacturing line. We now have the opportunity to force multiply people. That's essentially what AI does. Force multiplies people. It doesn't remove people. It doesn't replace people. It allows us to take the ingenuity and creativity of each individual and take that to the 10th degree by driving more capability within our business. And what we've found, not only from this last 6 months where ChatGPT became a thing, but from the last 7 years, has been that AI produces real outcomes within organizations. The biggest change now is that the bar to get in is lower. When we first started doing this, I'm going to show you, it's funny, we were talking about this project that we did for this company, Clover. And there's this video of this that I won't really go through the video too much, but it's in there. And it talks about this optimization of their supply chain. It's a relatively old story. I think we started that 7 years ago or something like that. But the bar to get into that project was like $1 million. And if we had to solve it again today, it'd be tremendously more efficient. So the thing you should realize is that most of these use cases that we're showing you, the bar to get into these use cases is very attainable to the ROI that's possible as a result. So opportunity is real. Operational savings tend to be the lowest of low-hanging fruits. These tend to be the things that if you can quantify it, and it happens a lot, it tends to be something that you can apply AI to, especially if you have the data and you have sponsorship behind it. So operational savings tends to be low-hanging fruit, and you'll notice in some of these use cases, they're ones that drive efficiency within the organization. And then the last is that revenue opportunity exists in both incremental and disruptive innovation. I'll describe the difference between those in a bit, but revenue opportunity or operational savings is truly what you have to understand if you're going to pursue any of these initiatives. The only reason you do this is because it pays off. Right? You don't build an AI model just for fun. You build it because it provides benefit to your organization, either by driving operational savings and force multiplying your employees, or by creating new revenue opportunities to drive your top line revenue in your organization. And that enables every one of us to think like business people and think like, how can my customer benefit from what I'm doing? And this is what you'll notice in most of the use cases that we drive today.
No, I think you hit it. I probably would add a little bit too that this is new and emerging technology, and not every at bat's going to be a home run.
Big time. Yeah.
But there is, you're going to get something valuable out of whatever engagement that you take on. Even the ones that didn't meet their objectives are still having real value to organizations who we're working with. And so, yeah, that's what I would add to that.
Okay, so it's going to feel like a joke, but I think this is an important thing to understand. If I were to articulate what my own personal experience has been with the AI revolution, it's this, is that this experience isn't good anymore. I was listening to a talk on CNBC, and the CIO of this organization came on and was talking about their initiatives. So I was like, oh, I'm really interested in what they're doing. I went up to their customer service page and I found this. And at one point, this is really innovative. I don't have to pick up a phone and call someone to get a response. I hate waiting on hold. Most of us do as well. We hate waiting for call trees. We hate waiting to talk to one person only to talk to someone else. So creating a forum that would have someone call me back if I have a customer service issue, like I can't get in my hotel, would be really meaningful. But what have I now come to expect? I've now come to expect an experience that's far greater than this, because this experience, although asynchronous, still requires me to pick up the phone. It still requires me to take energy and invest in this relationship in a way where I'm already mad. So I had an alternative experience to this. I showed up in a hotel in Minnesota that I usually stay at, and I asked for my hotel room, and they said I didn't have a hotel room for the day. I was like, what? I made this reservation earlier today, my lack of pre-planning, but I made it earlier today. Well, what I found out was that I actually made the reservation for 2 weeks in advance, unfortunately. Like I accidentally clicked the wrong date. And because I had made it through a booking platform, like most of us do, that they couldn't just change it on their end without me paying more money. So I go to the app for that booking platform, and it has a chat experience. I go into the chat experience and I say, hey, I'm at the hotel and I booked for the wrong day. And they say, no problem, I'll take care of that for you. Within seconds, there's a phone call, the guy at the desk, he picks it up. He's talking to a person from that booking platform. They ask me if I would be okay with the slight change in charge. I say yes on the chat. He corrects it, hangs up. I go back up to the desk. I say, I think it's fixed now. He's like, yep, we're all good to go. And I'm like, that kind of experience asynchronously for me was much more capable than what I would have experienced with something like this. So what they did is they transformed my experience. I have numerous examples of where they've replaced something that would have interrupted my day with something that makes my day much more effective and requires less overhead to be able to make the customer's experience better or to create the right value for them. So this isn't good enough anymore. But what also isn't good enough, and you may not be able to see the bottom of the screen here, is this experience. So we've all experienced terrible chatbots. And this is a chatbot for the Hyundai Tucson, very recent platform, as of July 21st. What kind of gas should I use in my Palisade? The answer, can you please say that in a different way? I answer best when asked short general questions. I'm asking what kind of gas I put in your car. Like, you should probably know that, right? You should be able to answer that question. So I was building this other platform for a company, and the search experience wasn't very good. And the engineer was arguing, yeah, it's actually going, think about this. It's hard, and it's bringing back data, and it's doing a good job. And I'm like, you can't think of it that way. Your comparison is Google. If you can't provide a search experience that's on parity with Google, you've lost. The customer just immediately doesn't like it. That's why everybody hates the SharePoint experience, because it's terrible, right? Like the SharePoint search experience is just universally bad. Like you're now held in comparison to ChatGPT. If your experience looks like my chatbot, but it just gives you like 5 options, you got to click on them. Like you're not really chat. It's not really a chat. It's like more of like a WYSIWYG little like follow the options thing. That's not a chatbot. Chatbot is conversational, and this conversation failed. Now it might have tried to drive me in certain things, but it didn't. So you're going to measure up, and you have to measure up against the best. Now, thankfully, we have tools in our toolbox to make that happen. So as we talk today, there's 2 different types of innovation that you need to be thinking about. One type of innovation is where your first projects will probably come from, is incremental innovation. And this is, I already do this today. I'm just going to do it faster. So yesterday we were talking with a company that quotes additive metal manufacturing, okay? And 10% of those are automated. The conversation was, how can I turn that from 10% to 50%? We don't have to make it 100%. I just need to make a meaningful change in the number of those that I automate. That's an incremental change that takes me, instead of having to hire 10 more employees to do coding, I can keep the current number I have, and I can maximize their capability and return faster for my customer and win more deals. That's incremental innovation. Disruptive innovation is where I change the game. So we're working with another company that is automating the loan business. So think about what happens when you go to get a loan. You ever hear press the blue button on, such and such a mortgage and we'll get you your free quote, right? Well, it's not free, right? Once they have to do the hard pull, it costs about $2,000 to do a mortgage. What this company is doing is they're taking the loan officer out of the quoting process for the loans. They intend to not pay loan officers for quoting mortgages by automating the entire front end of that process and using chat to do it. That is disruption. You take that and you change the entire market. So think about your business in the context of both of these things. How does the mission of my business change when I apply AI to different elements of the business that allows me to engage my customers in a different way? That's really what we're getting at today with a lot of these use cases. So one of the things that we tend to come out of conversations with is something called an idea registry. And the most important thing, we'll talk more about this in the context of how to get started, is that you have executive alignment through to your individual envisioning sessions. And what you can see here is that we're talking about ideas, name of the idea, a description of the idea, value category, how hard is it, and then picking based upon category priority, then ultimately selecting within those where you're going to place your bets. And then, again, the biggest benefit is that the bar is lower to get into these bets. Like I would have told you 4 years ago, each one of these is $1 million idea, so it better be worth like 4 million to you. In this context, it starts to drop. What's really important is that your organization is able to create something that allows you to prioritize the right ideas to perform your investment against. And Brian's going to talk a little bit more about that at the getting started, but any quick kind of thoughts on like things we've learned from this now?
So, yeah, in terms of like the value analysis, one of the things that I really enjoy doing these, I've probably done 10 or 15 of these, with different organizations, but getting the business users, engaged and like the art of the possible and like just the ideation, it's really fun to go through. Kind of like, this is like so old school, but this is maybe 15, 20 years ago that I was working at a financial institution and it was about to go belly up, and so they basically had everybody stop working for like 2 days, like come up with all these ideas about how to save money. And, what we're doing today kind of reminds me of that. Not that your companies are going belly up, but it's getting people to think about like, what are the pain points that we have in our organization? What are some of the manual things that they just hate doing every day? Getting people to like think about that and then us helping them like understand, yeah, that's actually something that we can do. And it's really only going to take, 4 to 6 weeks to get you progress on that. It's incredible.
Absolutely. One thing that spurs for me is when you think about the disruptive side, one of the most important ways to think about that is if I was starting my business from the ground up, from scratch, how would AI influence the way that I went to market and built my business? If I had no employees, I had no infrastructure, I had nothing, but I had money, how would that influence the way I built my business from the ground up? Don't take the sunk cost, think about what it would take from now. And that's what you have to consider in the context of your competitors, because your competitors are going to think that way. Okay, so let's start talking about types of ideas. So these are the 5 biggest buckets on the generative side. Think like large language model scenarios that we see most often. And I'll talk about the broader use case in a minute, and I'll show you examples to a large extent. So left-hand side, or right, looker's left, over here, we have the customer service scenarios and the order status scenarios. Kind of go together in a sense. This is about reducing the time that a customer has when they are curious about something, when they have a question, when they need answers, when they have friction. This like period where they're frustrated with you and you're losing the relationship. How can I reduce the time for me to provide them with a satisfactory response? Sometimes that's simply about giving them asynchronous experiences where they can get the answer. Sometimes it's about arming your customer service teams to be able to answer them faster by getting the answer faster. And sometimes it's about predicting the data underneath it so you have a reasonable response to give them. Sometimes the reason we don't respond to a customer is because we don't know. We're not sure. Well, what if I could give a better reasonable answer to that with a percentage or a confidence? That gets us to a point where we get to answer the customer's question with more data than we had before. So a lot of these use cases are about easing the relationship with the customer, helping them to get their answer faster. This middle one, sales quoting, is extremely popular. And one of the reasons it's so popular is because it's about driving top line revenue. It's about driving my customer relationships further and faster because I am more responsive than my competitors. One of our customers that we talked with, they went from taking 4 hours to create a quote to only minutes to creating a quote. In this particular business, this business is metal production. The person who delivers an accurate quote the fastest is usually the one who wins. So if we do that, we create more revenue faster. This right-hand side here, data mining, this is kind of split in 2 use cases. The first is about surfacing information. Sometimes this is internal ChatGPT instances. Sometimes this is internal scenarios where you're surfacing like healthcare information or what days do I have off, or tell me about my product I'm trying to sell. Like maybe I don't know about like the drafts of all the boats. I want to answer that question quickly to my customer. And it's also something where people want to ask questions of data. Like sometimes someone might say like, tell me my top 10 customers. And you have to say, well, I'll go get that for you. I'll create a report. Like, no, what if I could just ask something and it would tell me the answer to that question? That could change the game. And then this final item on the right-hand side, process automation. Think about this like anything that happens a lot. If it doesn't happen a lot, it's probably not a good candidate. If it happens a lot and it's meaningful, it's a great candidate. One of the items on this previous page, automation of PO and order matching for 400,000 to 500,000 orders a year. Not a huge company, but they do a tremendous amount of matching of orders. What happens if they automate that 90% of the time? Tremendous impact. So process automation is all about driving benefit. Now, some people they see RPA. The difference between what you can do now and what RPA could do before is that RPA now is enabled with the artificial intelligence to recognize what it couldn't recognize prior. We can look at a object or a set of text or a process, and we can do more with it than what RPA used to be able to handle. So process automation is a tremendous opportunity.
Yeah, I'm working with a call center that we did some analytics and identified 5 use cases that would cover 80% of their call volume, and we could automate 4 of those 5 use cases really easily. So it really can take a load off and allow them to do more meaningful work, really was what it amounts to.
So what you can see here, and I won't cover all these, is a variety of other use cases that have been around for a long time that now are enabled as a result of generative AI. So think of generative AI as the front end And sometimes the back end of a lot of these use cases on the left, like supply chain optimization or predictive maintenance or smart warehouse or smart products that create more intuitive experiences that lower the bar for your customers to engage in them. AI is not a new thing. It's just a thing that now we made much more accessible to our organizations, and the business realizes its benefit. This is a list of the top 10 industrial use cases. Interesting that predictive maintenance is at the top. Word about predictive maintenance. Predictive maintenance works if you've built a smart product or if you have a tremendous number of things that all happen the same way and you have the instrumentation deployed to do something with it. Where it doesn't work is where it's cheaper just to replace the bit or the saw or the element on the supply chain every 4 months or 3 months than actually doing prediction. So it's an interesting use case that it's at the top, but it's meaningful because a lot of companies benefit from it in their capabilities. Quality, supply chain optimization, cybersecurity. We'll show you an example of that later. All right, so let's go into some examples. So let's start with customer service. Okay, so this is an example of an application that we built for Brunswick boats. You can see on the right-hand side a standard specification of a boat. It has things like propulsion and speed and draft and so on. And on the left-hand side, you can see the question that we're using. So the question in this case is, tell me about the Sundancer. You can see that right there. And it's giving me an answer. But the elements of this that you should recognize is, one, it gives me the reference to the thing. So it always shows me where I can find that within the document. Why is that important? This whole hallucination topic, right? Like, is it giving me the incorrect answer? So now we have to back that up with where did I get the answer? So reference where that answer came from. You can also see things like what's the draft? Notice it's finding that. Or what's the maximum speed? See, interestingly enough, it's recognized that wide open throttle is the maximum speed. So sometimes it figures out interesting things. But however, one of the things that we've learned is that sometimes it doesn't recognize terms that you have, and that's where the real work comes in. I think one of the things that we found here is it takes about 2 days to create a POC. It takes like 2 months to create something that's actually production worthy. It's easy for me to show you something that kind of works. It's hard to create something that actually works for your end customer that they get value and have a satisfying experience from. And that's, I won't steal the thunder of this one, but we're going to talk about this one in depth in the next session.
Yeah, and your mileage is going to vary, right? So in the case of Brunswick, giving the incorrect information to somebody who might be on a boat in the middle of Lake Michigan, like that could be a problem, right? But for somebody who's doing an online shopping thing, having a little bit of a discrepancy or an error isn't really that big of a deal. So it really just kind of depends on the use case and how far you want to refine that. But yeah, so your mileage will vary a little bit.
Exactly.
Yep.
But you can see how you can create beautiful experiences that are very user-friendly and provides more than just even a simple chat experience, something that really gives them the information they're looking for faster. Next use case, and you can pepper Tim with all sorts of questions about this one, is the generative use case. So in this case, we have a person asking about how to shut down a standby home generator, and we are providing an AI response to the customer service rep to be able to provide a response back to the individual who's asking for the call, which tends to be the right way to start these kinds of projects. So in this case, like, you probably wouldn't want to give that information to the end customer until you become satisfied that you're achieving this necessary amount of accuracy in those responses. And in this case, we're giving that response to the customer service rep. They have a chance to validate it. They have a chance to tell us whether or not it's working or not, also what the source was, and then they can provide that response back to the customer service rep. This is something that's in production with their customer service team today. Now for something really interesting. In the upper right-hand corner, what you see is a diagram of a IKEA instructions to put together a shelf. And just within the last couple days, ChatGPT V dropped, which is a multimodal interface. Now, does this solve all the problems we have with multimodal diagrams and documents? No. Does it advance it? Yeah. Because I just gave it that diagram and I said, tell me what's happening in step 7. And it gave me a pretty reasonable response of what's happening in step 7. No key, well, there's a very minimal key, no words to describe it, and interpreted the document and gave me information about what's happening in step 7. So why is this important? It's important because it even further lowers the bar for us to be successful when we talk about interpreting diagrams, product use manuals, instructions, how-to things, where do I find kind of questions. I was looking at a manual yesterday and I said, it was of a cockpit of a boat. And I said, show me where the throttle is based on this image. First thing I did is I put into the image without the key, and it couldn't answer it, but it said most images like this have a key, which was interesting that it even knew that it would have had a key. I put it in with the key and it correctly identified the throttle out of like 16 different options that it was pointing toward and where it was in the boat. Fascinating that this is dropping so low in terms of their capability. Now, the other thing I did get it to actually incorrectly answer the question as well. And so it's lowering the bar, it's enabling us to do more, but it's not a magic wand. But amazing how far this is getting us in terms of what multimodal will actually create in the picture. Another type of interface for customer experience. Notice that these are like going after the most annoying experiences that we can have. What do we hate about healthcare? Pretty much everything about healthcare. But what do I hate most? It's about dealing with health insurance companies. When you deal with a health insurance company, you usually have to call someone, you're in a call tree, you're waiting, the person doesn't really want to be working there in the first place, and you get this really challenging experience of trying to figure something out. What if I could just go to a chat experience and have it provide the result of what I'm curious about? Like, what is my deductible? Is this covered? Can I do this kind of procedure? This is where there's opportunity to be able to enhance our experience. This is asking that same question about deductibles. It's actually relatively easy to deploy this inside of everyone's company that sits in this room, because you all have documents that represent your health coverage. You all have people that answer those questions. Do you think they like answering those questions? No. And sometimes they don't even know the answer. They have to go find the document to answer it. What if I could just arm the company with the answers as a result of training it on a document? It's kind of things that we can enable to let the people who are in human resources do the kinds of things that they love doing, which is helping people to be the best versions of themselves, as opposed to answering healthcare questions. Another kind of example of answering, what happens if I have an X24 code in my F-150 truck? No problem, that's a spark plug misfire. Also then enabling that with different types of adjacent experiences you might have a relationship to. Notice a lot of these are B2C or B2 customer service to C kind of experiences, enabling either my direct customer or my business that I'm working with. Sometimes the customers that we're working with are like they're B2B customers. So like they sell through a distributor. Same kind of scenario. They have all the same questions. You go to your car mechanic, how are they getting the questions? They're going out to forums. They're trying to figure things out, right? That's why it takes so much time from the research. What if you could arm them to be able to answer these questions faster? All right. I'm going to let Brian talk about this one because this is kind of directly to one of the use cases that you've been hitting on, which is like call analytics, customer call scenarios, understanding like the result of calls.
Yeah. So like I mentioned before, we're working with this call center. There's a couple of different ways that we were going to tackle the problem. One was some of the communications come in through emails. And so we can monitor emails that way. But a lot of the interactions are with voice, right? So somebody's actually on the phone, like talking with somebody. So we're doing real-time translation of that call and providing feedback to the user, in real time. So it's as if you're constantly talking to a chat GPT and we're trying to interpret or predict or project what people are doing. Another aspect of this was, just to start this off, was what can we learn about these conversations? Maybe not in real time, but just, can we score these things? And so we look at 3 different metrics. So just generally speaking, when that call was terminated, did the user get what they asked for? Like just simply yes or no? What was, the sentiment analysis, let's score this, was it a good call? Was it a bad call? And then the last thing that we did for them was, should this be like, we trained the model to be able to predict whether we wanted a manager to go ahead and just review this phone call. So most call centers have a certain percentage of random calls that they get reviewed. This was a way for them to really capture like where the training needed to happen and provide some efficiencies in coaching that way. So really good use case.
I was surprised by how often this use case comes up, actually. I wasn't kind of predicting that this was going to be one of the main ones, but for large companies, you can see how understanding the quality of their interactions with customers is really worthwhile.
Yeah, it's an area of the business that has such high turnover too. So training is a big issue for those areas.
Okay, let's talk about accelerating sales to close. So a couple of scenarios that this has become really meaningful in. The first area is creating quotes for customers in a fashion that is reducing time. It may also be about increasing accuracy. So sometimes quotes aren't accurate, sometimes they're produced and they have to be redone after they get to the actual production team. That was that other use case that like checked stuff to make sure that it was actually the right quality. We want to catch that higher up on the start. What's one thing we hate? We hate going backward in a process. People are really good about like continuing forward. Like if I'm at Disney World and I know it's a 30-minute wait for the Batman ride, that's actually Six Flags, but like there's a 30-minute wait for the Batman ride. I want to do the Batman ride and I'm okay just kind of like continuing forward because I have my expectations set. But what happens if I get there and I'm like told, oh, sorry, sir, you now have to go over here to this other new line and you have to restart. Well, I get really upset, right? Or the same thing with like customer service experiences. If I have to go back and explain it again, I hate that. This is all about like making sure that once I go forward in the process, I don't have to go back in the process to correct it. So sales quote generation, sales quote accuracy, complex quote scenarios. If it's difficult to put together, can I do a lot of small things to accomplish a big thing? So for example, we solved this for a customer that I'll show you in a second. That was easy quotes. But then once we solved the easy quote, we could combine a bunch of easy quotes to solve a complex quote. And then sales asset helper, which is like, my customer has questions about X. And that kind of goes back to that Brunswick use case where like, I want to know about the draft of the boat. I want to know about this. I want to know about that. Like, how quickly can I enable my salesperson to answer those questions? So this is an example. When sometime you learn to use Zoom it. Down in the lower bottom here, what it's asking is, can you get me the following items for our new set we are designing? I need this ASAP. Probably can't read it, but what it ultimately says is 301 stainless sheet, cold roll, 12, 28, 11 gauge, then a series of numbers, which orients around a piece of metal, a size of metal that needs to be cut, produced, and delivered. It's unique to this company. I can't screw it up, but it's the thing I need for every use case. So what we built for them is we essentially integrated this right into the quoting experience inside of Outlook, which is where this person's living. You could say, why do they get all their quotes in Outlook? It's a different story. But 90% of their quotes come through email. So right here, you have the extract of the critical information from that quote. That then is run in a machine learning model behind the scenes and then creates a quote right here, which the person can either modify or accept and send right back. And then we measure the extent to which they can accept it immediately or if they have to modify it. And we've been winning incrementally by increasing the accuracy of that month over month, that more and more often they can accept the first time quote. The long-term vision is they want to go headless. Headless for chat-centric quoting for X number of use cases from the customer directly, never having to interact with a person to get the thing that they already wanted. How do they do that? They get to a point where they measure like, how accurate am I when I have certain types of content come through and when I need to use an exception sequence to send them back out to talk to a real human and continue them forward on the journey. But what this did is it dropped the time to quote substantially. What you'll also notice is that the text was right in the email. So then one of the other things they had to solve was, well, people send over these requests for quote as PDFs that contain several things, like several line items. So then what we did is we would extract those all, turn them all into individual content, produce a master quote that then could be sent back to the customer, all without a human having to actually touch it. And these are not easy, right? There's 100,000 different possible SKUs of metal. And if you're designing the front of a dishwasher hood, that dishwasher hood can only be used on that dishwasher. Once they build it, it's gone. They can't reuse it. They can't sell it to someone else. That's what they built. So these are really important to get right when they do it. And what they've noticed is that their accuracy keeps going up because they can interpret and look for faults that other people, that a person, this is across 600 sales reps. These 600 sales, think about how hard it is to train 600 sales reps on custom metal quoting. Tremendously difficult. This is an opportunity for them to enable all those people with a base set of capabilities that they can then adjust over time.
You remember how long that took to get to stage
man.
one? It was like over a year, and we just did another project that's pretty similar to this. Not as robust, but it was like 2 months, so being able to get this this technology is solved. And when we did this originally, this was before ChatGPT. And so, now that we have those tools available to us, we don't have to create customized language models for your business. It's just so much easier for us to do it.
I remember when the data scientist, he built that custom NLP model. And
Yeah.
when we had ChatGPT, we gave it 3 examples and it largely was getting it right. It was like, holy cow,
Yeah, exactly.
the CIO was like, that's scary. Okay. Okay, so this is getting to another interesting use case for a company that builds Windows. And one of the things that you learn about companies that build Windows is how often these are custom. Way more than I ever expected. These were fully custom products. And it's all based upon how much do I know about the schema of producing these custom products? Well, the problem that these companies have is it's Excel workbooks with all these macros and challenges to produce anything really interesting. It's this nightmare that they've continued to move down the road. You ever see that car that's got the clowns sticking out of it and the guys, you're trying to cram as many people in, then you got the stuff on top. It's like that. Except it's a window company. So what they're trying to get to is a immersive experience that allows a person to point your phone at a window opening and lets you actually design the window hot as an individual. So instead of having the guy come to your location to do the spec, what if I lowered the bar, engage my customer directly to help them play around with this themselves. So by the time the person comes to the house, they've already potentially specced out what they want. And they've used an AR experience, not putting on the AR goggles because nobody has them, but what has everybody got? A cell phone. Everybody has a cell phone. The kids have probably had that phase where they went through playing that, what was it, Pokemon Go or whatever? Yeah. Where there's something here, but it's not actually here. Same kind of experience, right? I want an AR experience, provide me with the answer, allowing me to remove the need for my engineer to interpret something from a engineer, then put that into a spreadsheet, then put that into a design that goes into this follow-on document that then goes into the actual thing they're building, all of which are manual steps. Completely reinvents the experience of engaging you at home. And it's a lot more preferential to going into Home Depot or Lowe's and talking to the person at the desk who really isn't that well trained on any one particular window. In fact, that's one of the biggest challenges they have is they know that person doesn't really know their products. They kind of know them, but what happens when you have the conversation? They open up a book and it's got these paper pictures of windows and you're trying to figure out through that. All these companies are trying to create B2C experiences that kind of work with their B2B partner. This is another example of a quick order. I need 40 pallets of 2x4s, weather treated, no problem. Here's your order, etc. Giving the sort of same kind of experience around complex orders or refunds and certain scenarios. Same kind of experience you saw earlier, but for a simple home contractor kind of experience. Okay, let's hit supply chain. Okay, so this is the first, I don't want to say this first AI project. One of the first, probably the first really major AI project we did. that then was like the cascading project for many follow-on projects of similar types. And this was about optimizing supply chain around the context of demand forecasting. So this was a company called Clover. Some of you we may have used this example in the past, but I think it's really meaningful. It's one that we've now repeated in many other companies. And this problem is actually a really old problem that never needed generative AI in the first place. It was simple, old school machine learning problem. And what this is really about is solving the ratio between demand and inventory. And at some points you want more inventory, some points you want less inventory. Like during COVID, everybody wanted more inventory, right? You wanted the ability to keep producing. Everybody wanted toilet paper. But now I don't really want like 17 different, like 16 sets of toilet paper in my house. I want like just enough to get us by for like 3 weeks or whatever, right? There's a point in time where you have different decisions that are occurring and where you want to apply your capital to different points. In this case, it's about a $2 billion company, and they saved about $80 million over the course of a year via capital savings in their inventory as a result of optimization to the way they handled the relationship between demand, inventory, and locations. And what that then gives you is the ability to apply that resource somewhere else in your business. This is an optimization that's usually very attainable for organizations because the technology in this space they're fragile. Like you either have an ERP system that simply doesn't have this capability at all. Very few of the ERP platforms have anything like this. Or you have these sort of middle tier SaaS providers where people are trying to like send their data to it and get some kind of response. And sometimes it makes it better to some degree, but it tends to be this like ever struggle of switching from provider to provider to get a better value. And where I find people tend to eventually land is creating a competitive advantage by building a model that actually understands them. And that's what these guys did. So the goal behind this was to optimize the ratio of demand and inventory forecasting and provide ultimately a savings over year that also allowed them to prepare pretty effectively for when COVID happened and respond to it later. And I'll get you guys this deck. There's a great video of this company talking about what they did there. The reason I bring this up, to communicate, again, AI isn't new. It's just being explored and engaged in now because we can do this project a lot cheaper than we used to be able to do it. And that's what's made it so exciting. This guy took a big bet and said, I'm going to focus on driving my inventory costs down and spent $1 million on it. Now you can do this for a lot less investment, which I think is what's really driving a lot of value. All right. Let's talk about prediction. Now, prediction is something that, sometimes people equate to predictive maintenance, which is one of the use cases that we tend to talk about when we talk about prediction. Now, can I have a couple scenarios that we talk about the same thing? But think about prediction in the context of anything that happens within your business. What if I knew X was going to happen? What would I then do about it? That's essentially storytelling, right? Like, what would happen if I doubled my business? What would I need to do? What would happen if this site had an inventory loss? Well, how would I handle it? It allows me to model what if scenarios. Anybody ever watched like the Marvel show, What If? Like, it's just fascinating to think about that sometimes, right? In this context, it's imperative for us to understand what could happen to our business if something happened. And sometimes it's if our strategy succeeds. We all have strategies for our business. What if my strategy succeeds? What if I could predict what is going to be necessary if that strategy succeeds? So prediction has a lot of different engines. In this case, it's for a company called Heraeus. Heraeus is a company that, this video is not working, but it's a company that does a lot of things, but it melts metal. You ever see Terminator 2? Like when, it's like, I was reading this article about like the times it's appropriate for a man to cry. Like one of them is like when the T1000 or T800 is getting lowered into the metal, and he's like, oh, so sad, right? I see it now. That's what these guys do. They have these gigantic vats of molten metal. And what this video shows, but it's not showing right now, but you can kind of see in these other pictures, is like there's a guy who actually like goes up to that with like a dipstick and like has to check what's happening within this metal and like try to predict when he has to turn it off or change the temperature and stuff. And he's very experienced. But he only knows what he knows. And I actually hope he gets hazard pay having to do something like that, right? What we built for them is a air gap solution that lets them actually predict what they need to do in this space. So for them, they only have a couple of these machines, but the waste associated with screwing that up is tremendous because that metal is only used for one customer. It's custom.
They have to shut that. If they have to shut that down, it's like a week-long process. And so that's lost revenue over the course of like a very extended period of time because it takes 2 or 3 days to cool down, 2 or 3 days to heat that unit back up. So it solves a really expensive problem for them.
So remember when I said, like, you look for things that happen a lot, also look for things that are really bad if something goes wrong, or expensive if it goes wrong. That's kind of what this use case is about. They then scaled this, to other locations. Another scenario, which I'm I'll say I'm familiar with because I just had a baby, but I'm not really familiar with it because I'm not my wife. But what this is about prenatal heartbeat detection. So who's been in the delivery room before? Yeah, okay. You ever watched, like, for those who haven't, maybe you've seen like a movie where like they have the like little ticker tape coming off the little heartbeat monitor thing, and like the doctor comes in and he goes, what's it? He looks at the history of it, right? You're like, there's got to be a better solution to that problem. Like, why do they have to look at that on a piece of paper and then try to predict based upon what happened before what's happening in the future with the baby? What this is doing is it's saying, here's the view, here's the contractions. Maybe like giving too many flashbacks. And then here's what could happen in the future based upon what we're plotting. So looking at it, predicting, giving a perspective of what's going to happen with the mother and up to 4 fetuses in the context of the person, which is pretty interesting and something that's really like changing the way that people can look at that kind of data as they're helping a mother through that process. So prediction, again, doesn't have to be about a machine failing. It can be about almost anything. Okay. Hopefully we're not getting through example fatigue. Y'all still with me? Yes? Okay, cool. Quality inspection. Quality inspection, what you are looking at is the inside of a sewer pipe. I've never seen that myself by crawling around in sewer pipes. I did watch Shawshank Redemption. It looked terrible. And what you can see here is this like robot is going around in the inside of the sewer pipe and is looking for failures. Now, in the past, the person used to have to watch that video to be able to look for those failures themselves. Now, what a bot can do is go down the sewer pipe, come back out, and then it can indicate these little areas where issues are found, and then have the period of video where that issue happened. This is for a company called Bergeson Nipel, and they use this to be able to speed up the process of looking for those failures, and then also drive accuracy within which ones that are actually significant issues versus which ones that aren't. So video analysis in the quality space can be a fantastic opportunity for you to do things. And we'll talk about another example for JJ Keller in just a minute that we did a POC for. Okay, order status to action. We're getting there. Order status to action is what happens when something goes wrong with my order. What I've experienced with this is there's 2 parts of this screen where I can improve my experience with my customer. The first is making this very customer conversational driven. Allow it to be a chat experience that I can ask questions of. When's my order being delivered? When can I expect it? What's wrong with it? What happens if I have to change my order at this phase? Can I? All these are questions that companies have. You probably have a top 10 list of things that people ask while the order is already in the process of being shipped. These are things that we can answer via asynchronous experience or arm the customer service team with the right answers. But what you can also see here is the entire state of the order. And I don't know if you ever heard the term Domino's Pizza Tracker, but there's just a really exciting announcement from Domino's and Microsoft a couple days ago about their partnership to further enhance the artificial intelligence surrounding order delivery and other activities that they're performing within their stores. So even the historical Domino's Pizza Tracker still needs work put into it. Because if you didn't know this, the first version of the Domino's Pizza Tracker actually had no relation to whether or not it was actually being produced or not. It was just a dumb timer. You'd order and they would set a timer and they just have like enough accuracy that it sounded good, but it wasn't actually accurate. Now it's gotten to a point where it's, it's actually accurate. So what you can see in here is that there's different stages. What customer service teams have a difficult time answering is, what do I answer if I don't know the answer to the question, right? Like my thing's delayed, but how do I know when it's going to be delayed until? Well, most customer service teams don't have the information about the business to know that answer. You need to be someone pretty like broad in your knowledge of the organization to be able to answer those questions. So it causes delays for you to be able to respond to the customer. That creates frustration and angst amongst your customer that on the wrong day might cause them to go somewhere else. What this allows me to do is to say, what if I could predict like this yellow section and say when that gets delayed, it tends to be this period of time. I can start to set some level of expectation with my customer based upon the information I know. This is a kind of problem that can allow me as a customer service rep to be able to provide a reasonable answer to my customer when I have some ability to predict different gaps within the process that are knowable, but not knowable for me because I don't have the vision across the organization. Now, one of the most common blockers that people say when you're getting started in this space is, I don't have the data. I think that's a cop-out. I don't have the data as a cop-out. I don't have the data for that use case is the real question. Most of these use cases are very attainable by getting the data. Many of them are not. This is an example of one where you need a hell of a lot of data because you need to be able to know what happens across the supply chain. So I don't have the data for this part of this use case is the right answer. I don't have the data and I need to spend 2 years waiting for Godot is not the right answer. That's just kind of a like not really thinking about the entire problem in the context of your business. All right, data mining. Data mining has become very, very interesting. And there's a couple of different scenarios that I'll pull up. Maybe these aren't like truly data mining, but I think they kind of fit. This left one here is like monetizing data. Some of our customers, one of my customers is a food distributor. They distribute food, about $50 billion of food a year. And they know a tremendous amount about restaurants as a result of distributing their food. They know which ones are in the top quartile. They know which ones are profitable, which ones aren't profitable. They know which ones are more likely to stay in business for more than 5 years. You know, the level of restaurants that fail after 5 years is tremendous. This is where I can turn from being simply a food distribution company into a knowledge company. I can charge premium SKUs. I can charge premium products to my customers because I know something about them. Even if your product is dumb, food is relatively dumb, right? I don't like digitally enable a banana, but I can digitally enable the knowledge I have about the banana and them. So data mining in many cases is about allowing my customer or my internal organization to be able to learn something about what I do. Also comparables with public competitor data, connections between data, people, products. Identifying those connections is where we can drive tremendous value from it. And a lot of this is driven by AI. This is a view of me asking a question, show me the revenue by product in descending order. It created, it being like ChatGPT, created the SQL code that then provided this answer of my top 10 customers. Your mileage may vary here, right? Like if you know the answer to the question and you can write reasonable SQL queries, you could probably create something like this for certain types of experiences. Other ones might be too complicated. You have to really think about the kinds of answers you want to provide, but you can do really interesting things. You also notice that Power BI is going to have a lot of this baked in for like analysts. There are a lot of interesting things happening in that space. Okay, the last one I'm going to cover, and then we're going to go on to our interview, is process automation. Happens a lot, it's expensive. I want to create a new line of business, any kind of process automation. This could be customer contract process reviews. That one scenario at the beginning was matching of the PO with the order. I need to produce the right thing every time. It could be supply chain insights or reviews of something where I have to look for quality, validating something, anything that happens a lot. So this is an example of customer contract automation. So in this scenario, we take a look at the customer's purchase order. They've sent that purchase order back to us. It contains information. it is not in the same format or even the same diction that my order is in. I have to match that to a production order and the sales order. All those three things need to match. Typically, I need a human to do that. And I need to interpret what is in that because it might be like rolled, might be rolled, or might be RLL. And I need to be able to know that those things are the same. And a human be like, yep, those match. Or a human might be like, no, they don't. Now I need to train a platform to be able to do that same thing. So if I can create an AI platform that can do that, I can validate that before production and execute the order a percentage of the time. But then the other percentage of the time, I'll send it to an exception for human intervention. That's that scenario that operates 500,000 times. So what if only 10% of those go to a human as opposed to all of them? Now I've just totally force multiplied the opportunities that my organization has. And that's probably the way to think about a problem. Your best incremental scenarios are ones where does success look like, does partial success equal success? If yes, then I'm probably doing my first project in the right place. If partial success doesn't equal success, my bar for success is pretty high, and I have to have a lot of stick-to-itiveness around the value of the idea for me to go down that route. Okay, now I'm going to close this with two really interesting use cases. This is one that we worked on as a demo for or POC for JJ Keller, and what we're looking at is distracted drivers. What are these truck drivers that I'm driving down the road at 80 miles an hour in a multi-ton missile, okay? And I need to make sure that I'm not going to run someone over or be unsafe myself. So I'm looking for belts is okay. I'm not distracted driver, phone use, things like that. This is actually a classical machine learning approach to this. We had to teach it what the belt is and am I using a phone and all these kinds of things. So you can see on the right hand side, it's identifying those things, right? This guy's phone use and seatbelt. Well, he's using a phone, and that's problematic. So these are problems we want to look for. And then we thought, what if I put this at ChatGPT-V? Can you describe this image for me? I see a man sitting in a car. The man appears to be middle-aged and thinking. Not sure why he's thinking, or what he's thinking, because he's got his belt around his arm. Doesn't appear to be safe. Is he wearing a seatbelt? I do not see him wearing his seatbelt. That's pretty interesting, right? I didn't have to teach this what a seatbelt was. It just knew it. What is the current speed of the vehicle based on what is visible in the image? The image indicates the photo was taken while moving at 73 miles an hour. Note that that's on the dash cam that gets captured as a part of the camera in the cab. So even without training, I'm getting interesting things from this vehicle. Now, here's where this got really interesting. You can't see the image very well, but you saw it before. Is this person driving safely? I gave it none of the information. I just gave it the image. Is this person driving safely? I did this yesterday. Put it into Bing's GPT-4V. Highest Bing, blah, blah, blah. Based on the image you sent me, blah, blah, blah. Oh, based on the image you sent me, I can say that the person in the driver's seat is not driving safely. Here are the reasons why. The person is holding a phone to their ear, which is a distraction and violation of the law in many states. The speed limit in residential neighborhoods is usually 25 miles an hour or lower. How did it even figure that out? Because I'm in a residential neighborhood and that's a house. The car is traveling at 47 miles an hour, which is too fast and dangerous for pedestrians and other drivers. The GPS coordinates show that the car is in Richfield, Wisconsin, where the weather is currently cloudy and rainy. Also shouldn't be driving that fast while on a phone when it's cloudy and rainy in a residential neighborhood. Bad stuff, right? What I find really interesting about this is the kind of question that you really are asking. This is the why. And I'm not asking about the speed of the seatbelt or the phone use directly. I'm asking about the why. Is my driver safe? And this had to put all those pieces together to answer that question. Now, again, your mileage might vary. This is very new, but I can do it with classical. I can do it with GPT-V. Now I can do it with this even faster. And I think that's just fascinating.
This is really fascinating. And Little backstory on this. So when JJ Keller, came to us with this problem, it's not that like this kind of like detection hasn't been around for a while. For them, it's that the systems are so expensive and they're proprietary and nobody wants to share it, right? So all these pieces are starting to come together. And literally what we're talking about with ChatGPT 4V, that was just announced this week.
Yeah.
So this is so fast and so emerging. It's kind of crazy. It's just what it can do is amazing.
Okay. I lied. This was the last use case. Smart products. Smart products, anyone who builds something that your customer interacts with that has a digital element, this is where you get to be a smart product. I'll look for you to watch this later, but this is a video of a customer of ours, Brunswick. They built a smart boat. They're a leader in smart boating. So what they do is they build a boat. They build a boat that enables you to know, is my battery charged? Am I geofenced? Is it going to run out of gas by the time I get to my destination? Different elements that they're factoring into the boat to enable you to have a great day. One of the things that I hate, and I have a boat, and I just talked to the CIO of this company yesterday, talking about how, and Rick burned me because I was trying to determine what kind of gas to put in the boat, and he's like, Nate, that's obvious, and apparently it wasn't obvious to me. But providing a great experience for like the boating experience is one of the most like instrumental things. You back your boat in the water and the battery's not charged up, and you got the kids with the life preservers on, and then you got to get back out and waste 4 hours of your day fixing something. Like, everybody hates that experience who's had a boat. Everybody loves the experience of going out and tubing. How can I have more fun tubing and less annoyances getting the right thing to put in my boat because I didn't know it was something that was wrong? This is what they're trying to do, right? That's where predictive maintenance becomes real. It's where smart capabilities become real. This is the last scenario, which is the smart guard service. This is something that JCI is working on. The idea of not, is the wrong person in my facility? Is there a person in the facility? Like, they have these guys that sit, you've all seen the movies. This guy sits at a desk, watches these little, these screens, and is like, is someone in the facility? Yes or no? Or is someone within the yellow lines? Yes or no? You can do smart guard service to not replace, but augment that person's ability to accurately detect that something's happening. So detection of instances, detection of faults, problems. One of the things that we worked on with a customer was even enabling wayfinding within a warehouse to find parts for picking and predicting the best routes that an individual could take. All right, so a couple closing comments here. There are a tremendous number of examples. Hopefully what you found from this is, wow, how do I even pick one? How do I select what's right for me? Goes back to the beginning, and that's envisioning, it's executive alignment, and that's what we're going to talk about in our How to Get Started session. But hopefully this enabled you to think about, wow, these are possible, these are real, these are things companies are actually doing, and it's driving value for them. And if I think about that in the context of the mission of my business, I can make a difference to how I execute on my business over the next 5 years.